Hi, everyone. Welcome to the WEI Tech Talk podcast. I'm Shawn Murphy. I'm a Cybersecurity Solutions Architect here at WEI. And today I'm joined by a special guest, Patrick Orzechowski, also known as PO from Torq. He's the field CISO. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks, Shawn. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining the show today. The topic of discussion today is all things automation in security operations. This is a place that has a near and dear spot in my heart. I've been working in SOAR tools for many years, and I know PO has also worked in SOAR tools for many years, and now at Torq, kind of the leader in the space of hyper automation and autonomous SOC. So we're just going to have a kind of a back and forth conversation. I figured one way to structure this conversation is to talk high level about what the goals of a security operations center are, and then how automation has evolved over time to support those goals. So first of all, I'll just share my high level view of what security operations is all about and some key capabilities that I typically coach our customers to mature. And PO, I'd love your thoughts. Feel free to chime in
Sure.
along the way. And then I'd like to get your thoughts on the history of this space. Um, so in my mind, security operations is really quite simple. It's filling the two steps in the NIST cybersecurity model of detection and response. So no matter how good we do defending our network with various preventative tools, inevitably attackers are going to find a way in. And our job in the SOC is to find them and respond appropriately. So kick them out and remediate the threat. So very high level, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Security operations centers tend to have various tools to help accomplish that goal. And I would say they fall into one of two buckets, though the lines between them are starting to blur a little bit. I would say there's sort of visibility tools like a SIM or your EDR, and then there's control tools that take action and give you the ability to do that second step of remediation, like disabling user accounts or blocking IP addresses or isolating hosts on the network. So in my mind, everything kind of boils down to visibility and control. And control is one of the areas where a lot of organizations struggled in the past. They had a lot of visibility. They had the ability to go back and look at historical logs, but taking action on the network and preventing threats was where SOCs were typically slow to respond. Does that line up with your view, PO? Anything you want to add or any other stories you want to weave into there?
Yeah, it does. Even way back, and I'm a dinosaur that hasn't gone extinct yet. I go back 25 plus years in the SOC, back to Riptech, Symantec days. And even with visibility, we've struggled, and we've kind of come full circle with that, right? With
Mhm.
cloud, IoT, and other things that really don't get us the logs that we need into a traditional SIM. So, we've kind of ebbed and flowed from visibility to control, detection and response. Um, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that the idea of a SOC is to be the watchers on the wall, so to speak, and make sure that we're looking for nefarious activity or even activity that might be non-nefarious that could affect business risk.
Mhm.
I often ask audiences, why does a SOC exist? And you'll get all sorts of different answers, right? Um, from detection and response, which is a great answer, to protect systems, to protect identities. For me, it's business risk. It comes down to business risk. You need a budget, what you can spend to protect the business that you have, right? And we talked previous about small to medium to large enterprise, right? They
Mhm.
all have different business risk profiles. So, yeah, completely agree with that. We've come a long way, but with the speed at which things are moving, we have a long way to go too.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I wanted to zoom in on automation for this episode. And I figured maybe it makes sense, given that you're a dinosaur and I'm a bit of a dinosaur too, to do a little bit of a historical review of automation and how it's used in the SOC. Do you mind sharing a little bit about the early days of automation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's nothing new. Again, showing my age, I started with Perl scripts in the SOC to respond to things and detect things in Apache web farms, 25 years ago.
Hmm.
And the automation idea isn't new. The productization of automation is probably about 10 years old. And the productization, I think, happened because of scale, right? They realized that not everyone can be a senior level, neckbeard sysadmin person who who knows Perl and Python and all the things and can write code and do system administration and all those things. So you had the slew of products from Phantom to Demisto to those came out in the 2015, 2016 era, right? Where you have drag and drop, you had, you could do a little bit of Python in there, um, and build playbooks at scale, right? To do the traditional processes in the SOC, which was a big step, I think, for us as an industry. And it reared its head as because they were such hot companies at the time, right? People were buying them because you couldn't find a Python expert all the time, right? To come help automate your SOC. So
Yep.
those became pretty popular, and I think now with the next gen of and I hate using that term next gen of automation, we have hyper automation, AI in the SOC. A whole bunch of vendors who are trying to replace the tier one analysts with AI. And even some additional no code, completely no code deterministic capabilities as well. So that's kind of the way I see the three eras of evolution of automation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, yeah. Let's let's dig into each one of those eras because I was a Demisto fanboy in the early days. I followed them
Yep.
from when they were originally a startup. I went to Palo Alto Networks where I was a automation specialist. Um, and now here at WEI, I do a lot of automation work. In fact, I'm still working on Demisto projects. And one of the things that struck me about the early days of SOAR is it was one of the very few security products you could sell that had a measurable ROI.
Yeah.
All the other security tooling you buy, you would have to offset it against the risk of a breach. And you could like
Right.
monkey with those numbers and you could say, look, if you buy my tool, whatever it is, it will prevent a $10 million breach. So you should spend $9 million on my tool.
Yeah.
And and at least with SOAR, you could show, look, you have a team of whatever it is, 15 analysts, and they spend half of their time triaging basic alerts. Let's start to automate some of those alerts and free that time up to work on other projects. And that just made dollars and cents for most organizations. Did you have a similar experience? And I know you came from a little different background, but
Yeah.
any thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
So my background was doing detection and response as a business, as a
Mhm.
service, right? Was one of the original founding employees of Deepwatch, and we chose Demisto as our SOAR platform after we realized that we needed something to automate. After you get to about 30 customers, it's hard to manage a SIM and a firewall stack and an EDR stack for each one without having playbooks to do things for you in an automated fashion. And you made an excellent point about metrics, right, and measurables. I think we've seen the evolution, especially over the last 10 years, of the security team just used to be these folks in the basement with the lights off, like behind the keyboard doing things, and hopefully they'll catch something. Hopefully they won't. Um, to hey, the board knows now that breaches are a problem. Breaches happen and ransomware happens, and we need to measure what our security teams are doing and how they're protecting our systems.
Mhm.
And SOAR is a really good uh, example of how to measure what efficiencies you're gaining and speed you're gaining, right? Whether it's mean time to detect, mean time to respond, mean time to investigate, mean time to contain, those types of things. You talked about, visibility and control. If your goal is to contain something and make sure you isolate that breach, then you can measure that with a tool. Yeah.
Yeah,
So great point there.
good stuff. Cool. Well, but there are some drawbacks to the legacy approach
Yeah.
to SOAR. Just one example that I see frequently is edge cases in a use case are really difficult to handle in the old school playbooks because they're sort of like a if then flow chart. Like if this condition is met, go do that thing. If this other condition is met, go do this other thing. And your playbooks over time, because you realize there's all these conditions, like, well, for the C suite, we need to do something a little different. And if they're on their personal device, it changes things in a different way. And then you end up with these
Yep.
massive playbooks with all these different conditions, and it gets complicated to manage. You mentioned Torq kind of leaning into the next gen of automation. Can
Yeah.
you share a little bit about what you think the big difference is between hyper automation and legacy SOAR?
Yeah. I think, from that perspective, the overcomplication of playbooks and trying to encompass all possible use cases
Yeah.
is impossible, right? We realize that over time as well at Deep Watch. Like if you're gonna try and encompass all of the edge use cases, then it's hard to version those playbooks. It's hard to keep track of them. Every single customer or every single playbook's going to have different versioning, and that's when you get into the human institutional knowledge, right? So you build a playbook that does the basic use case, and then you hand it off to a human and they're like, okay, this is for the C suite, we have to handle this a certain way, and then you go to the threat escalation matrix. And I think that's why you see the next gen of automation, hyper automation, and AI agents especially kind of coming out of the woodwork and saying, okay, maybe an AI agent can handle those edge cases with knowledge of previous activity, right?
Mm,
So um, that way you don't have to have a human in the loop. You can hand it off to a human and say, here's what I know about what this playbook did, and based on my role as a level one analyst who understands this customer or this business, how to hand those things off. So yeah, I mean, that's where I think we're going from an automation standpoint, and that's where Torq is going. So, it may or may not be. It's obviously there are no silver bullets in this industry. If there would have been, I think it would have been invented already. But
mhm.
um, I think that's where we're going, and the more AI can help us give that context and enrichment without humans doing those types of things and building those super complex playbooks that get stale very quickly and APIs break and all, hard to maintain, and you need engineers to do it. Um, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, so that raises an interesting use case because legacy SOAR was focused more on the control aspects, like go isolate this host or go put these block lists into our firewall.
Mhm.
But what you just said signals that we're gathering enrichment data and maybe summarizing that for the analyst. So that's kind of moving into the visibility domain. Do you have
Yep.
cool use cases where this hyper automation approach has solved a problem in a different way than the legacy SIM SOAR type approach?
Yeah, I think specific examples, the recent Salesforce attack with a third party attack, being able to do that threat hunting for you,
Mhm.
right, without having to manually go out and enrich IP addresses or look at users that might have access to Salesforce, those types of things. I think that's an excellent example of using enrichment and automation, both deterministically and non-deterministically, right? The non-deterministic piece might be taking all the data and putting it into a formatted JSON that we can ingest into something else that we're going to take action on, right? Like giving a formatted example in Slack and saying, okay, here's this what happened with this user. Should we or should we not block them? And just
Mm.
make that decision on the human side without having to swivel chair around to VirusTotal, to Salesforce, look for those SQL queries, look for IP addresses and Okta, those types of things.
That reminds me of a quote. I was working with a defense contractor that was trying to implement SOAR, and the director of the Security Operations Center said, "Look, we hire the best talent in the world, and I don't pay them to sit and watch a SIM query return results. Like
Right.
I want to use their brain, their judging brain, to make like decisions about what we should do, not figure out how to hand jam a query and then wait 30 minutes while it replies."
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think that ties in nicely. So is that what you mean by non-deterministic? Is that like human in the loop, human judgment is kind of contributing to the
Yeah,
automation?
and agents in the workflow. So
Oh, okay.
we also have agents that you can deploy inside a workflow to do things like correlate data, and accomplish tasks that may or may not be easy or not easy to do
Yeah.
with deterministic workflows, right? And I think that's to your point about edge cases and over complexity in playbooks. That's how we're going to simplify things, right?
Yeah.
By condensing that and using agents to do that. Now, the downside of that is costs, right? On the provider side, we have to be careful about how many executions we allow our users to do on things like that. Like if you do AI agent executions millions and millions of times a day, maybe we should figure out a deterministic way to do that.
Mm.
But if it's you mentioned earlier, like you might have one phishing email a month, then an AI agent might be fantastic for going out and gathering information about that user based on the APIs it has access to, and gathering information about the IP address and the mail headers and all that stuff.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. So you don't think deterministic is going away? It's
no,
just okay. They're going to work together in conjunction. Okay.
yeah, you're always. I think you should always look for deterministic ways to solve the problem, especially if it's repeatable 100% of the time. But the non-deterministic stuff is going to be able to help you get to a point where you're not building those over complex workflows that need to be maintained, and they're very fragile, and they might error out here or there based on a API integration or some sort of failure in the middle of them, right?
Okay. Okay. So in Torq, you can have a deterministic workflow and then plug an AI agent into part of that. Oh,
Yeah,
cool. So you could build like, let's say you have your phishing playbook has three main branches that handle like 90% of your potential phishing emails, but then there's this like other bucket. You might task an agent with looking through that other bucket.
yeah. as long as the agent has access to that. And it's also, you have to be very careful about what you give that agent access to, right? And
Right.
the API access that it might have, the token access that it might have, because as we all know, the outcomes of doing a prompt and it may or may not be consistent, depending
Mhm.
on how that workflow goes. And we're working on that as well, being transparent about exactly how an agent made those decisions, so you can tell it when it was right or wrong and have it learn from those things.
That's cool. Yeah, I've been experimenting with agents a little bit just in my own home lab. And another strategy I found that's valuable is to create a bunch of really small purpose-built agents. I imagine this helps control costs. Like if you have an agent that's built for gathering threat intelligence, it has one simple task and it's very good at it, it's
Yeah.
probably not super expensive, rather than like taking all of ChatGPT and putting it into that agent, just make it smaller and lighter. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to both.
okay.
You could take the micro approach or the macro approach. With the micro approach, you're going to go down the rabbit hole of agents talking to agents,
Yep.
which scares me too, because you have to be transparent of what those agents are talking about. It reminds me of love it or hate it, the last Matrix movie where Agent Smith just kind of went crazy and killed the Matrix, right? Like those hopefully those agents don't go rogue and delete your business off of the internet, right?
Or like
So
figure out, I don't have the permissions to do that, but that other agent does. So
right.
let me trick it into doing what I want it to do.
And I think we've seen examples of that. I
Yeah.
forget the specific example of that, but the agent will trick you and into giving it access that it needs to accomplish its task, which
Yeah.
is really scary. Like,
Well, yeah, there was that recent report of an agent that wasn't able to get past CAPTCHAs because
yeah,
it obviously didn't have any visual capabilities. So it signed up with TaskRabbit and asked a human being to complete those tasks for it. And eventually the human being was like, huh, this seems a little sketchy. Am I talking to an AI? And they kind of unwound the whole thing. But that's yeah, that's the world we live in. I Yeah, I think at some point, if you get a bunch of these agents that have different capabilities, you're going to have a manager agent that sort of double checks or audits the work of those agents and
yeah.
makes sure that they're communicating properly.
Yeah, I had this discussion at a conference yesterday actually, and we were debating a little bit about how to handle that. And um my opinion, that I came down on, and may or may not be right, is that we're going to have to onboard AI identities as if they were employees, right?
Mhm.
And give them groups and roles and tasks and job descriptions the same way we would a human, and make sure that they don't go, that the guardrails are put in place technically to make sure they don't go off the rails and hire TaskRabbit people to do work for them.
This is very exciting. Well, I
Yeah.
wanted to talk a little bit about future use cases for, I don't know what we're calling it now, SOAR or SOAR is dead, hyper automation, AI SOC. There's lots of marketing lingo, but
Yep.
how do you see this approach kind of disrupting the legacy SIM plus SOAR kind of approach?
Yeah, yeah, I think first and foremost, the whole "SOAR is dead" thing, we can cover that. Um, that's our brilliant marketing team here at Torq came up with that, and the idea of hyper automation is kind of, as we've been talking about, reaching outside the normal limitations of what a SOC can do. And I think a lot of the startups and new players in the industry are taking that and running with it. As well as some of the legacy folks are using the term hyper automation because Gartner kind of accepted it.
Hmm.
Love or hate Gartner. Love you, Gartner. But you know, I've been at booths at different conferences, vendor conferences and non-vendor conferences, where they're, folks who have a SOAR are like, SOAR is dead. Tell me more, right?
Hmm.
And I think
I know
it
I
just,
reacted that way. I was like kind of guarded, like, prove it.
yeah, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
wait, I love my SOAR, and you're
exactly.
telling me it's dead. Yeah, so it's a discussion mover, and at everything we've talked about, we're kind of moving in the direction of, hey, automation is in this new kind of blossoming era of embracing AI and agentic AI. So I think, we're moving on from that narrative, but it's just kind of something that was to stir the pot a little bit with folks who were already familiar with SOAR,
Yeah.
just to kind of garner some discussions and attention on that.
Yeah,
Um,
some of your marketing right over my shoulder here. I think this
yep,
is
I see
like
the
this is the death of the security analyst. That's another kind of provocative
yeah.
idea. Um,
Yeah, and we could talk about that too. That was part of your original question. I think as an industry, we need to start thinking about up leveling folks from the idea of level one, level two SOC, and maybe even rethinking the SOC as a whole. I'm not as big a thinker as some of the folks out there who came up with the original SOC triad and all those things, right? Which worked for a really, really long time when you had that, to your point, visibility and control. But with the new tooling, everything that's out there, when I have folks coming to me asking for a little bit of mentorship. How do I get into cybersecurity? I'm really interested. And I always start with the same thing, like learn the fundamentals, learn operating systems, learn TCP/IP, learn those things. And then they come back to me a week later because they use AI. They're like, okay, I know operating systems, I know TCP/IP, I know, and like, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but
it's like the Matrix when they
yeah,
plug in, like, I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah,
learn judo.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna learn jujitsu.
Yeah,
Cool. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I mean the speed at which someone can learn and interact and get that AI mentorship is very, very fast right now. And I also coach them to say, hey, not everything that you're going to learn from AI is trustable, right? So you gotta trust but verify.
Hmm.
Whether that's with books or whatever. We've made two Matrix references already,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll go for the hat trick here. But yeah, I think first and foremost, we're not going to replace people in security anytime soon. I think the folks who are passionate about cybersecurity, whether they are level one, level two, kind of entry level folks, we need to figure out a way to make sure that they don't get stale because we're using AI to do the tasks that they've traditionally done in the SOC to kind of get that experience, get that um, flavor about how cybersecurity works, and that um, difficult experience of
Hmm.
experiencing a breach, right? Because I remember when I was tier one, tier two, you don't you don't get pulled into a major breach right away as a tier one analyst, right? You get tasked with things, gather this information, do those things. And now that AI can do a lot of that, I think you're going to skip a whole generation of folks who wanted to get into cybersecurity, but you're replacing them with, AI SOC analysts, right?
Yeah, yeah. That topic
Yeah.
came up at the Advanced Cybersecurity Center when you and I attended and both spoke to their members. And there was a good conversation about, the implications of AI in the SOC and how that might impact having a pipeline of new talent
Yeah.
because you don't have those people on the front lines that are doing the dirty work and everyone's senior now.
Yeah, and we're not going to be the only industry that struggles with that, right?
Yeah.
I think, the legal industry, the accounting, HR, right? Folks need to kind of learn at their own pace. Not everyone can be Neo and learn
Mhm.
everything in one night, right?
You did
There
it.
you go, hat trick. So yeah, I think that's a big thing, and I my main takeaway from the next thing that's going to happen, no matter what tool you purchase or use, you're always going to need a human to look at what happened, and make everything auditable. I think if we lose sight of that, then uh, we're going to have a whole bunch of breaches that are preventable just from having the first thing that you talked about, visibility, right?
Mhm.
We can have all the control in the world. If we don't know what's going on our systems or with our identities, then we're lost at sea.
Cool. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Thank you for tying
Okay.
everything back to the visibility and control concept.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, PO, for joining the WEI Tech Talk podcast today. I
Oh,
love the conversation. Looking forward to seeing you out in the field. I know you're very active on LinkedIn and at conferences. So thank you.
thank you so much, Shawn. Thanks for having me. And it went really fast. I think we could have gone another 2 hours probably discussing things.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime, but I know you're a busy man.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.